Do not scroll past this moment because what you are about to witness is not just an interview. It is the exact second everything shifted, and if you stay with this until the very end you will understand why when Shen Yue finally spoke about Wang and Bai, the atmosphere changed in a way no one in that room was prepared for, because sometimes the most powerful truths are not shouted. They are revealed in calm words that carry far more meaning than anyone expects. The interview did not begin with tension. It started like any other. Simple questions, soft laughter, carefully controlled answers that followed the rhythm of professionalism. Shen Yue sat composed, focused, responding with the same calm presence she was known for. Nothing felt unusual. Nothing hinted at what was about to unfold. But moments like this never announce themselves. They build quietly, waiting for the exact second when something shifts just enough for the truth to slip through. The question came without warning. Not aggressive, not dramatic, just a slight turn in direction, a mention of names, a connection that had been discussed quietly for far too long. And suddenly the room felt different. Not visibly, but undeniably. Shen Yue paused, not for long, but long enough for everyone to feel that something had changed. Her expression did not break. She did not lose control, but there was something new in her eyes, something that had not been there before. She answered carefully at first, measured, choosing each word with precision. But then something shifted again, not outwardly, but internally, as if she had reached a point where continuing to remain neutral no longer felt possible. And that is when it happened. She spoke more directly, not loudly, not emotionally, but clearly. She said she could not believe that Wang would ever go back to Bai. The words landed quietly, but their impact was immediate, because it was not just what she said, it was how she said it. There was certainty in her voice, not hesitation, not doubt, just a calm conviction that made the statement feel heavier than expected. The room froze for a moment, not dramatically, but noticeably. The interviewer did not interrupt. The cameras continued rolling, but everyone understood that something significant had just been said, because statements like that do not exist without meaning. They come from somewhere, from experience, from observation, from something that cannot be fully explained in a single sentence. Shen Yue did not elaborate immediately. She allowed the words to remain as they were, unexpanded, unjustified, because sometimes explanation weakens impact. And this moment did not need explanation. It needed space. The reaction was subtle, a shift in posture, a glance exchanged, a silence that stretched just slightly longer than expected. And in that silence, the weight of what she said began to settle, because it was not just a comment, it was a perspective. A glimpse into something deeper, something that had not been openly addressed before. The interviewer eventually spoke again, carefully, attempting to guide the conversation forward. But the energy had already changed, because once a moment like that happens, everything that follows is shaped by it. Shen Yue continued, not avoiding the topic, but not diving into it either. She remained composed, steady, as if she had already said what needed to be said. And there was no need to add more. That restraint made the moment even more powerful, because it suggested confidence, not uncertainty. It suggested that what she said was not accidental. It was intentional, even if it was not planned. The interview moved on. Questions returned to safer ground, lighter topics, easier responses. But the shift remained, invisible, yet present. Because once something real enters a conversation, it does not disappear when the subject changes. It stays, lingering beneath every word that follows. The final moments of the interview passed without further disruption. Everything appeared normal again, controlled, professional, as if nothing unusual had happened. But that was only on the surface, because the real moment had already taken place. And moments like that do not need repetition to be remembered. They stand on their own. The cameras stopped. The room relaxed. But the impact did not fade. Because outside that space, the words would travel. They would be heard. interpreted,
discussed, questioned.
and that is where the real story begins. Not in the interview itself, but in what follows after. So this story does not end with her statement. It does not end with that moment of silence. It ends with something more powerful, a truth that was spoken calmly, but carried deeply. A perspective that cannot be ignored once heard. A moment that changes how everything is viewed moving forward. And now the only question that remains is this. When someone finally speaks with quiet certainty about something everyone else avoids, does that truth begin to reshape the narrative around it? Or does it remain a single moment that lingers without ever being fully understood? The moment the cameras stopped rolling, the room did not return to normal, and if you stay with this until the very end, you're going to understand why what Shen Yue said did not end when the interview ended. It continued in the silence that followed, in the reactions no one voiced out loud, and in the way Wang and Bai suddenly became the center of a conversation that could no longer be controlled. At first, nothing seemed different. People adjusted their seats. Crew members moved quietly. The interviewer smiled as if everything had gone according to plan. But beneath that surface, something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough. Enough for everyone to feel it. Because moments like that do not disappear when the lights go off. They linger. They settle into the space. They follow people out of the room. Shen Yue remained composed. She did not rush to leave. She did not try to explain what she said. She simply stayed present, as if she had already accepted whatever would come next. And that calmness made everything even more intense, because it showed that her words were not accidental. They were real. The production team exchanged quiet glances, not questioning her, but acknowledging that something important had just happened. Something that would not stay contained within that interview. Outside, the story began to move. Not slowly, not carefully, but quickly. Clips replayed. Moments analyzed. Every pause examined. Every word repeated. And that single statement started to take on a life of its own. Because people were not just hearing what she said. They were trying to understand what she meant. Was it certainty? Was it emotion? Was it something deeper that had not been fully revealed? And that is where everything began to expand. Because once a statement leaves the room where it was spoken, it no longer belongs only to the person who said it. It becomes something larger. Something interpreted. Something discussed. Something that continues to grow. Wang heard about it. Not directly, but through the way it reached him. Fragments. Reactions. The tone of how it was being talked about. And that tone told him everything he needed to know. This was not just another comment. It was something that carried weight. Something that could not be ignored. At the same time, Bai Lu felt the shift as well. Not through confrontation, but through the silence that surrounded her name. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than anything else. And that silence now carried a question. A question that no one had fully answered yet. The final moment of this story does not happen in front of cameras. It does not take place in an interview. It happens in the quiet realization that something has changed. That what was once unspoken has now been brought into the open. Not completely, but enough. Enough to shift perception. Enough to create tension. Enough to make everything that follows feel different. Shen Yue did not go back to correct her words. She did not try to soften them. Because some truths are not meant to be adjusted once they are spoken. They are meant to exist exactly as they are. And that decision became the real ending. Not a dramatic conclusion, but a quiet acceptance of what had been set in motion. So this story does not end with that interview. It does not end with that single sentence. It ends with something more powerful. A moment that continues to unfold beyond what we can see. A statement that has already begun to reshape how everything is understood. And now the only question that remains is this. When someone finally says what everyone else avoids, does that truth lead to clarity? Or does it open a door to something even more complicated that has yet to fully reveal itself? If you felt the weight of this moment and want to see how everything unfolds next, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to see it, because the next part of this story might reveal even more than what has already been said.